HTML is great. It's so great that the people who keep putting out these awesome dev surveys just put out one focused entirely on HTML. The results aren't out yet because the survey's open until October 10th. So if you're seeing this video before then, make sure you check the link in the description and go check out the survey. Maybe even do it before you watch the video so you can see how you feel without my bias. Then obviously come back and watch this so you can see how I make my decisions coming up in the future. We'll take a look at the results too. So without further ado, let's do the State of HTML survey. While web developers tend to focus on JavaScript and CSS, none of what we do would be possible without HTML acting as the foundation. It has long seemed like HTML wasn't evolving, but things may be changing. New elements like select list are on the horizon. Cool new features like popovers and a swath of related browser APIs, web components, progressive web apps, etc. Sasha's done a great job running these surveys, but this year they had Lee Veru helping out, leading design and branding for this new survey. I'm actually really excited to see the difference compared to previous surveys. And it starts with everyone's favorite, forms. This is already so much better designed than previous surveys. Holy shit. Yeah, damn. Very impressed. Okay. Data list. Method of providing presets for a user to select in a form control while still allowing custom options. I have heard of this, but I've not used it. Wait, no, yeah, I've used data list actually. I've absolutely used data list. Yeah, that's silly of me, of course. Autocomplete, I've actually used that a bit. HTML media capture. More experience than most on that one. Input show picker. Heard of, haven't used yet. Seems fine. Form data API. Sadly, I have. The reason I'm sighing here isn't because the API is particularly awful. It's because it's really hard to get type-safe data out of form data, and building the bridge between your form, your validation, and the type safety between the two is miserable. I haven't seen select list. No browser support. That's why I haven't. Content editable. Plain text only with no rich text. I hadn't heard of that, but that does sound very useful. There's also a cool feature that if you pick something you're interested in, that at the end of the survey, it'll be part of your reading list. That's really cool. Which input types have I used? I've used range, number, I use file a lot, I've used data a good bit. Time I used once, datetime local I use a good bit. Month I've used, I don't think I've actually used week before, but it's cool that exists. Color I've used, email I've used, tell I've used, URL I've used. So I mentioned that if I want to put something on my reading list, I have to manually plus it. Oh, above, yeah, that's the add button. Cool. So if I want to read about that in the future, I can click that, and now I have that in my reading list for later. That's actually really cool. Which of the following form features have I used? Required, absolutely. Pattern, I've not. This I have. I think some of these are being used under the hood with something like the React hook form, but I'm not super, like I've done custom validity and I've done check validity. I haven't reported validity before though. Oh, I've absolutely used these. I'm curious about invalid event though, as well as the pattern attribute and report validity. So I'll add those to my read later. What are your pain points around HTML forms? Type safety, integration with reactive JS frameworks, relationship between HTML elements and validation layer. Cool. Let's hop to interactivity. This is where a lot of HTML's really grown over the years, where before HTML was almost entirely static and you relied on JS for all the dynamic behaviors. Now there's more and more dynamic stuff built into HTML itself for interactive behaviors, like a dialog box, such as a dismissible alert or a sub window, which I have used before and will continue to, or details with a summary. A disclosure widget that can be toggled or hide or show content interactively. This I have heard of. I haven't used it. I talked about it a bit before in my HTML tier list video. Yeah, I'm interested. There are definitely use cases for that. An exclusive accordion. I remember playing with this for something. Oh, it's not even supported yet. So I guess I was playing with it and that's why it wasn't working. But that's a really cool thing to split up and group details based on names and identifiers. I see that being really useful. Popover. I have spent so much of my life doing popover related things. I'm so happy this is being built into HTML now. The inert attribute, I have never heard of. Actually, and invisible to assistive technology. If you're not familiar, putting disabled on a button sucks because it makes it not work properly with most screen readers. So having something be inert instead, it's a really good idea. I like that a lot. Which of the following DOM attribute related methods have you used? Yes, 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 and yeah, I'll use all these again. So the following DOM HTML string handling features have you used? I've used all of these. DOM parser's a fun experience if you haven't used it before. Oh, no, that's not what I hit. I wanted all of these. I undo that. As you guys see, making forms is not the easiest thing. Which of the following element moving DOM methods have you used? Have I used insert adjacent element before? I don't think I have. I've done at least parent append. I've used element up before. I remember one weird place where I used that for like a side project. Replace children I've absolutely used. Fragments I've not. Fragments do seem really cool. Creating like a partial document within your document, being able to move it around. Sounds dope. I'll say, oh no, it's not want to use again. I'll just throw that in my read so I can learn more about it later. Which of these methods have you used to add interactivity or dynamically modify HTML? Obviously, yes, yeah, not interested anymore. And I'm certainly not interested in web components, if y'all know me. What are your pain points around dynamic HTML changes? Except forms. Because honestly, my biggest thing with dynamic HTML is the relationship between it and forms. But popovers, tooltips, disabled states with good accessibility. Those are all things that I've run into a bit. Lazy loading, I have used quite a bit. It is very nice. Source set sizes, this I have used. It was fine. I don't want to do want or not want. I usually rely on components to do these types of things for me, like the Next.js image component, which does a lot of this well. Resource hints. This is really cool for letting the browser know when to start fetching specific things. I've heard of it. I think this is being done automatically with some of like the link tag stuff in Next. Definitely interested in it. And I should actually read more about this because I'm not super familiar with the different behaviors. Yeah, content security policy. This I have absolutely dealt with a lot. And as annoying as it can be to get set up right, dealing with XSS attacks is super important. So it's important to do that right. Fetch priority, I've absolutely used. This is really nice for making sure your logo's there as soon as the page loads. Not as soon as, but as soon as reasonable. Blocking render is also really nice, where you can block rendering of content on the page until a certain script is loaded. If you want to make sure the script is there as soon as the content appears, which I have used sparingly because blocking content always sucks. But if your script is really important, like analytic scripts or like core behaviors, it can be nice to do that. Don't block your whole page on your React scripts though. Model for AR, VR, 3D content. I actually know quite a bit about this and I'm excited because the React 3 Fiber crew, for obvious reasons, hyped about this. And I'm excited for more 3D support in the browser in general. The controls list, video. That I have played with actually in order to have videos that are embedded without the ability to download it. So you can control basic behaviors in that toolbar. So the following have I used? I've used math. It was fine. SVG I'll absolutely use again. Video I'll use again. Object I'll use again. Canvas I love. Iframe, I'm not going to do positive or negative. It has its gotchas. Picture's fine. Again, I usually use image, but picture, especially with different source types, can be really nice. And audio, I am very, very painfully familiar with. Sandbox attribute on iframe, yep, pretty good. Fur policy is fine. Allow on iframe, yep, I'd say that's overall good. I used nonce once. What did I use it for? I don't remember, so I'm not going to pretend I do and check it. Cross origin, yep. And integrity, yep. Have I include machine readable data in HTML? Time and date, yep. Have not used any of these. No idea what any of these are. And JSON LD, I'm actually curious about. So we're going to put these in the read later. Let me know in the comments if you know about RDFA or JSON LD and what your thoughts are on it, because I have no idea what those are and I'm excited to look into them later. So when we inevitably have the follow-up going through this, hopefully I'll know what all of these things are. Which of the following internationalization features have you used? So the lang attribute, directory attribute. I absolutely use lang. Dir, I don't think it's directory. I don't know what it is, so I'm not pretending I do. Don't know what that is either. Absolutely used international date time. I used this once. I can't remember what for. Same with that. Number I was fighting a lot somewhat recently for the Twitter extension I had made. Specialization message format. Proposal for the JS API to handle localizable strings with variable interpolation. That's a huge win. I haven't used it, but I want to use this. I've built internationalization and worked with it a lot at Twitch for formatting of DOM content. So having that be built into the browser is very, very exciting. International plural rules. This I actually have used. It's very annoying dealing with different pluralization rules in different languages. Relative time I've also used, and I've not used locale matcher or segmenter. These both sound interesting. So in the read later it goes. What are your pain points around managing content in HTML? The biggest one is hydration errors around differences in client and server runtimes, i.e. rendering a relative date time when server is in different time zone. That's the one I think of most immediately. Trying to think what else I run into. I think that's fine. Web components, everyone's favorite. A mechanism for holding HTML that is not to be rendered immediately, but maybe utilized later for JS. This is actually really cool in order to render something in the DOM and be able to put it somewhere without having to re-render it later, or also to server render something that isn't visible, but might be later. It is really nice. Custom elements. I have used it. I don't have a strong stance either way. Obviously in React, we make these within the JavaScript layer, so they don't actual different HTML elements, but having them in the DOM, having the ability to create your own custom element is pretty cool and really powerful. And obviously, in order to have used that, I now have to know how to define them. I'm not going to say I want to use again because I'm mixed on it and I don't really play with those things much. I tend to live in framework land. Scope custom element registries. No idea. We're living in a different world there. Shadow DOM, I did not love. We do a whole video about that. I don't want to go into it here, but the Shadow DOM feels like a really weird abstraction on top of the DOM. And as a way to isolate styles, it's cool, but the interop between the Shadow DOM and the traditional DOM is very painful to work with. As we see now with declarative Shadow DOM with shadow trees, it gets more confusing. Named slot assignment. Again, heard of, kind of curious. I'll add it to my read list. Need to better understand it. Slots is a term that's used for a lot of different things. Yeah. Imperative slot assignment, a way to assign elements to slots manually via JavaScript so that slot assignment does not have to be managed by the component consumers. No idea what this is. Element internals API, assigning hidden semantics to custom elements, facilitating accessibility and allowing them to participate fully in forms. Never heard of it. Seems interesting. DOM parts, cachable representation of a part of the DOM that can be updated performantly. I love that this isn't supported yet. I have not heard of this, but that does sound interesting, I'll be honest. HTML modules, again, not supported yet. Have heard about it, and it does seem interesting, but we're far ways away. Import tab list from tablist.html with type HTML. Interesting. Very interesting, and I'm curious to see how we end up using these things in the future. Which of the following web component features have you used? I've yet to use slot within web component context. I've used it in other frameworks like Remix and Astro, but I've never used it here, so can't say I have. Exposing parts, nope. This I've had to use and it was painful. This I've had to use and it was painful. This I've not used, and I've not used the rest. Have you used any web component libraries? Use Lightning. Is Lit a web component framework? I'm pretty sure Lit is, right? Am I crazy? Because I play with Lit a bunch. I'm putting Lit here. Relationship between web components and existing JS frameworks. So many parts necessary for even simple things. Shadow DOM is rough. Compatibility with great tools is also rough. Accessibility it is. Landmark elements. I've actually used most of these, and they seem pretty good. Tab index attribute. This I have put a lot of effort into getting right in a lot of projects, so that I have a lot of familiarity with. Focus group isn't officially browser supported yet, because I've absolutely heard of this and was hoping to start using it more. It'll be very, very useful for like choosing the order where elements get focused when you're doing something like keyboard navigation. So that's not just an accessibility win for people who have accessibility requirements and needs. This is also useful for any user working with a keyboard on their browser. Search, I have used. Very nice. Low vision, atypical. I am very colorblind, so I account for that generally, and I definitely love throwing things through the Axe tools to see if it can detect any contrast issues. Mobility impairments, I should think more about this. I do account for this. When I'm doing drag and drop stuff in particular, I think a lot about that, because holding down a click and dragging it to somewhere is not something every user can do. Vestibular disorders, no flashing lights, but obviously that's not enough. I wish I could do, I wish there was like a 50% where it was like, we try for a lot of these, because we certainly do. Learning disabilities, again, I go out of my way to make our copy as simple and digestible as possible. I increase the size of our text wherever I can. I do a lot to try and help with this, but it's certainly not enough, and I haven't studied it well enough to confidently sit here and say, yeah, we handle learning disabilities well with our services. It's a thing that I account for and I try. I guess the question is, do I account for this? And I do. So I'll check it, but it feels dirty. I wish this was like a slider for how much thought do I put into our design here. And as somebody who has a large portion of the stuff here, yeah, we account for that. And yeah, when I'm making websites, we definitely don't rely on sound, but I also make videos and I don't publish SRTs for them because they're really hard to generate, and the ones that YouTube makes are better than the ones I custom generate. So these are all things that I do my best to account for, especially the mobility thing. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's like I have actually blocked a lot of things because like the drag and drop interface would have been too hard for certain users, and making sure that we always have a one-click method that can be easily targeted and selected by any user, regardless of their capabilities. Yeah, I think a lot about the Apple ad with the woman in the wheelchair who edited the commercial herself. That commercial makes me cry at least once a year. And if I ever built a tool that couldn't be used by somebody like her, then I failed. What other things are part of my accessibility? Absolutely like to think about keyboard navigation. Descriptive alt text is super important. Skip the content links. I should do these more. I wish I had the confidence to check that right now, but I don't. Same with this, with field set and legend. We should use those more. Information hierarchy, absolutely agree. I try to use H1, H2, H3. Beyond that, I don't find them as valuable, but they are very helpful for accessibility reasons. Meaningful link text, absolutely agree. And I go out of my way to try and make all of our links highlight the thing that's interesting, not just the word here, so it's clearer. Form control labels, absolutely. Visible focus ring, absolutely. Not relying on pointer only. Almost all of our hover behaviors are like changing the color so so it looks nice and feels nice. That we don't have hover behaviors that are deterministic or even in JavaScript. Almost all of our pointer behaviors are CSS level, so absolutely. Sufficient contrast, yes, we're strict about that. Not relying on color only, absolutely. First reduce motion, yes. It prefers contrast. I don't know if we're handling this. We have really high contrast, but we don't provide alternative CSS for users who prefer that. Probably should. I'll think on that one. Which screen readers do I test with? Test with VoiceOver. I used to test with NVDA a good bit. I haven't used JAWS in a long time, and I haven't used TalkBack ever. Yeah, VoiceOver that's the Mac one, right? Because that's the one I obviously use the most because I'm usually working on a Mac. But NVDA is like the go-to Windows one, so I try to do testing on that too. We had a lot of issues at Twitch where NVDA would have weird bugs with things like reading chat, so I put a good bit of time into NVDA. I use Axe and I use Lighthouse, and I don't use the other things. VoiceOver.js actually sounds very interesting, so I'm adding that to my read later. Biggest pain points around web accessibility. I am trying to decide which angle to take here. I have a lot of thoughts. The biggest pain point about web accessibility for me is access to teams, for sure. Access to the devs, teams building. My general point here is that for something to be accessible, the people who have accessibility needs need to be able to access the team building it. Because no matter how many like high scores you get in Lighthouse and in Axe, there will be things you can't account for through tooling. And if you have users that have these needs, they should be confident, excited, and able to reach out to you to let you know where your service is failing them. So I think it's really important to have good access on your services and applications, not just in the sense that your service itself is accessible, but that the team who built it is, so users who have specific needs can reach out and get the assistance they need to make your service accessible. Users with accessibility needs are some of the hardest working people I've ever talked to in my career, not just as a web dev, but as a professional in all sorts of creative and non-creative fields. They have to work so much harder to make these things work for them. They are more than willing to reach out if they're given the opportunity. If we really want to make the web more accessible, then every single page needs a button at the bottom that's an obvious contact us with any needs you have that are keeping the service from working for you. And if services don't have that, they are not truly accessible, no matter how high their scores are on these tests. Anyways, native-like web apps. Oh boy, this is going to be a controversial one. The File System Access API. This I have used. Very, very useful. The badging API. Select the badge on the web applications icon to notify about updated state. This I've heard of and actually do need to use this more. It's really, really powerful. Ooh, this I've used. It's really nice to allow a user to share things from your web page. Allow progressive web apps to control how they are launched, e.g. in a new window or tab. I have not heard of this, but this is very interesting, and I want to play more with PWAs for a lot of reasons, so that is going in my read later list for sure. File handling API. File handlers, action, open file. Yep, this, again, we're using for a lot of things, and for PWAs in particular, very, very powerful. Window controls overlay API. Display override window controls. Display custom content over the title bar area. I did not know this was a thing, but that is very exciting. Once again, read later. If you're not familiar, this is the part of the bar of your web app. Like if I go out of full screen, this guy here with these controls here, being able to control that, change the color, maybe have content overflow into it. It's really nice. Exciting that that's part of the window API now. Isolated, I've never heard of before. Permissions and signed updates. Fascinating. I'll say interested for that too. If I used, Flutter's not a JavaScript framework. I mean, it is as much as Electron is. I think it's weird to put Electron here and Tori here because Tori's cool, but you guys know how I feel about the rest here, so I have to say that. Native text, fine. Game engines, i.e. Unity and Unreal. Cool. I abuse local storage. I abuse session storage. I abuse document cookie. I should use cache storage and IndexedDB more, but I don't right now. Have you used any of the following Progressive Web App technologies or APIs? At Manifest, I have Service Worker. I've used Mock Service Worker. I've not had a good enough reason to use a Service Worker in a real app just yet. I want to, though. I'm not, but I want to. In notifications, I have. And now that they're supported in Progressive Web Apps on mobile, specifically on iOS, those are much more exciting than they've ever been. Back at it. What are your biggest pain points around making web apps that feel native? iOS. I love iOS, but they do not have much in terms of support for proper PWAs. It's getting much better, but there's a ways to go. Animations, web animations feel so rudimentary compared to native tools. Yeah. If you ever tried to make nice transitions on a web page similar to what mobile does, it's miserable. React Native has really good animation stuff, but that's like a whole separate layer built into React Native through that native layer. Once you've built a native app and taken advantage of SwiftUI's animation primitives built in, it's really painful going back to the web and realizing how far we are. Other tools and features. Oh boy. 11T I've used, Gatsby I've used and didn't like, Hugo I have not actually used, Jekyll I used and don't like, Next I obviously love, Nuxt I've used but need to use more. I will put that there. What else have I used? I feel like this covers most of the things I've used recently. Yeah, Svelte Kit, worth putting in here. Solid Start, probably, yeah. And Remix. Yeah, WordPress not being in here is funny. Yeah, Remix isn't a site generator because Remix has to have a server. In order for Remix to be a site generator, you have to run a script that goes to all the pages and saves the HTML. So yeah, Remix is not really a site generator, it's a server. Where all the other things have some form of static out or they're based around the static out. Vue is covered with Nuxt. Vue cannot generate a static site. Copilot, yes. Absolutely. Not used Next. Marquee, I miss it dearly. Center, I don't miss as much. Used Frame, I've used Blink, and I've used plain text. Good to have Marquee get some representation in here. We love our old favorite element. What existing HTML features or browser APIs are you unable to use? Regex, backwards lookup, immediately comes to mind. WebRTC, video greater than 30 FPS. Looking at you, Firefox. What other things have I had issues with? View transitions, I really want more browsers. What else? Missing anything? Y'all know me better than me at this point. I think this covers most of it. We're going to go with it. Which existing HTML features or browser APIs are you unable to use for other reasons? Date time picker, web components. I guess that datetime picker probably fits here, honestly. DX, integrations with other frameworks. PWA is a good one. You gotta add 3 elements. Whew. Oh, God. No, this is too many things I want. Oh, ow. My soul. I want so many of these. I want almost all of these really badly. Infinite scroll sticks out immediately. I need that. Tabs would be a really good thing. And a custom, yeah. Oh God, it's really hard not picking any of these others, but I need all of those so badly. Switch and toggle. Yeah, I think I need toggle slightly more than I need tabs, but literally all of these would be huge. Other than star rating, who the fuck cares about star rating? Like, can I do the 3 I care about the least? Because star rating, I care about barely. Segmented buttons, And data table, like it would be really hard to make a data table that works for every user's needs. This just feels like an impossible feat. But the amount of hell I've went through trying to make a toggle that works in a form properly, and the amount of times I've had to do that, yeah, please, pretty please. Other than yourself, how many developers use the libraries, packages, components that you create or maintain? We're at thousands. We're not at millions yet. You all need to get to work on that. But thousands of people are using the stuff that I and my teams build. Ow. Does TSX count? Because every time I talk about HTML, my JSX behaviors leak. So if this is the split between TypeScript and like JSX, I spend about 50-50. But if it's not, then it's entirely JSTS. I'm going to do 50-50. Because JSX feels like and behaves like writing HTML, and the result in my DOM is HTML. What do I use HTML for? Blogs or other text-heavy sites, design systems, desktop apps. Yes. Entertainment, programming and technical tools, telecom, social media. Covers most of what I'm doing now. Nice. And about me. How old am I? The mustache absolutely skews it heavily. Correct answer was 28. 11 to 20 years of experience. Been coding for way too long now. Company size, 2 to 5. Look, guys, it's hard. Yearly, over. Yes, I have a CS degree. Live in the US. Man, white. Cognitive and color blindness. That's all the surveys I do. How'd I hear? Sacha DM'd me the link. How can we improve the survey? On best effort questions, some amount of flexibility on how much effort would be nice, i.e. the accessibility questions about what do you consider when building? Absolutely want the email when this is done. Let's see my scores. 865 points. I'm in the top 2%. I would hope so because I spend so much goddamn time thinking about, talking about, and looking into all these things. And I have my reading list. We did it, guys. What about y'all? Did you do the survey? What was your score? What was your favorite thing you learned about HTML in this? And are you excited for me to cover the results later in the year? Once again, want to shout out both Lee and Sasha for the hard work they put in making this awesome survey. Without these, it'd be really hard to know how people feel about all the awesome changes happening to the web, from JS to CSS to now HTML. I really genuinely enjoyed the survey, and the quality of surveys keeps going up, and I'm so excited for both the results of this one and to see what y'all have cooking next. Thank you guys again, and remember, if you want to try the survey out, links in the description and in the top comment. If you want to see my thoughts on the CSS survey, I'll pin that video in the corner because there was some really interesting stuff there. Thank you guys as always. Peace, nerds.